You know, it's not about Donald Trump. It's about God. And God is in charge, as you said, of kings, of all kings and all that. So one of the reasons why Donald Trump came to power was so that prophecy could be fulfilled.
My goodness.
And he does it. He issues the Jerusalem Declaration, first time in modern times that any world power has ever recognized Jerusalem. First time since ancient times. That's how big it is. And now there's a whole mystery that links him to an ancient king, which I will not get into. That's in there, but I'm going to get into another mystery. But that he's following the mystery of an ancient king. His words.
Is that in the book?
It's in the book. Okay. Yeah, it's in the book.
This is Jonathan Cahn, a Protestant preacher who has, as I've demonstrated on this show multiple times, bashed Pope Francis, maligned him, slandered him with misinformation, bears false witness against him very grievously, and in the process tries to hawk his books to his audience, trying to connect his accusations against the Pope with his written material. Here we see a video of him claiming that Trump has fulfilled prophecies, and then of course points people to his book for more information. We see this over and over and over with Jonathan Cahn. What he seems to do is he reads into things and jumps to conclusions, doesn't really do good research, but just kind of, again, jumps to conclusions, reads way too much into things, and then speculates, claims to have a prophetic ministry. And of course, you can find out more by purchasing his book. This seems to be the pattern with Jonathan Cahn. I want to spend maybe about an hour here in the wild world of Jonathan Cahn. It cannot be healthy. It cannot be healthy to live on his material. Like, this is just wacky stuff. But let's spend about an hour in the weird world of Jonathan Cahn and see what it is like. First thing I'm going to share to you on the screen is an article from Pulpit and Pen, a Protestant website, about Jonathan Cahn, writing critically about him. Jonathan Cahn's knowing the difference between Shemitah and Shinola. This was posted in 2015. One of the reasons why this was a pretty big deal back then is Jonathan Cahn was making all kinds of claims with his book, The Mystery of the Shemitah, and he was going around all over people's channels and shows, promoting his book and stirring people up with alleged prophetic messages. And it talks a little bit about the problems associated with that. Let's explore that. As of this morning, Jonathan Cahn's best-selling book, The Mystery of the Shemitah, ranked number 2 in Amazon's prophecy category, number 3 in religion, and 129 in books overall. It did rank number 1 at one point. Cahn's prophetic oracles also graced the New York Times bestseller list. Cahn has been selling his predictions on almost every major news outlet out there, and up until the last minute yesterday was digging into his predictions that a great shaking would take place across the world. It's a theme that we see a lot from these guys. They try to predict massive things are going to be coming just around the corner, blah, 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 blah. The problem is, of course, it didn't happen. The Shemitah ended last night. Shemitah is once every 7 years. You have a Sabbath rest, a year of rest. According to Scripture, that is what this is referring to, that 7th year. Shemitah ended last night at dark, beginning September 25th of last year. The predictions were not true. So you're saying all kinds of, big things are going to be happening, and yet they didn't happen. And we're going to watch a little video of his trying to explain that. It's pretty comical. Jonathan Cahn, who calls himself a messianic rabbi whose credentials are dubious, wrote a book detailing 10 signs present before Israel's collapse, comparing them to 10 signs now present in America, called The Harbinger. With the success of the book, Khan springboarded into a new divination, this time pulling from the Old Testament ceremonial law and the command in Exodus 20:11 that the ground lay fallow every 7 years, which was both agriculturally astute and required the Israelites to trust God for their provision. And by the way, there's often a lot of connections that he makes between Israel and America. He kind of sees America as this new Israel. Debts were also to be canceled during that year as well, which was one of a number of safeguards against the holding of long-term debts in Israel's economy. This year was called the Shemitah, meaning a releasing, referring to a release from debt, which Khan has interpreted more ominously as shaking. It continues. Debts were to be canceled. Doing the math, Khan reveals that September 25th, 2014 to September 13th, 2013 is the Shemitah year. Here's where things get wonky. Khan argues God has given warnings to the United States in a 7-year cycle going back decades. The Lord deals with nations on a 7-year cycle, like he did Israel. Things like stock market crashes, economic recessions, and so on have happened in 7-year intervals as a warning that this very Shemitah year will be God's final judgment on America, which of course didn't happen. America has been unforgiving of debt and violating the Sabbath years, and so God is judging us in this year's Shemitah, again, seeing America as this new Israel. Along with John Hagee's 4 blood moons, the mysticism of these Hebrew roots influenced Judaizers has mainstream evangelicalism lapping up their predictions like water. Unlocking secrets, providing hidden keys, and unwrapping prophecies through astrology, stargazing, date setting, and omen interpretation seems to be the key to book sales as of late. The hype. Charisma magazine predicted 10 things that are going to happen within 15 days of the end of the Shemitah. By the way, can't find it anymore. Yeah, they took it down. Wow. Interesting, right? Although if you go to the Wayback Machine, I did find it here. So yeah, you're not able to just scrub everything from the internet, Charisma News. It's not the way things work. People can just look up your stuff on the Wayback Machine and see what you posted. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. You can go and read it. And they're hawking Jonathan Cahn's nonsense. But again, they took it down, presumably because it's embarrassing, given that it was a miserable failure. A list of a lot of coincidental things planned on the world's calendar. This is what they try to do. Jonathan Cahn tries to say, well, on this day, this is going to happen. And, in this day in history, this other thing happened. And he tries to make connections between the two. A list of a lot of coincidental things planned on the world's calendar. The author ends by writing, I am fully convinced that the months ahead are going to dramatically change life in America. Another false prophet bites the dust, I guess. WorldNet Daily discussed the strange signs on Shemitah's final day, only 2 days ago, in which Khan mentions 2 signs, the collapse of a crane in Saudi Arabia and a rainbow in New York City, both on September 11th, of which he said were striking signs that nothing would happen, apparently. And this is what they do. They'll just kind of be kind of broad in nature, and they'll just say, there's something big's going to happen tomorrow. And then, something's going to happen somewhere in the world tomorrow. When something happens tomorrow, well, there it is. You'll also see Jonathan Cahn saying things like, well, there's going to be a big earthquake. And it's like, dude, did you know there's let's Google how many earthquakes happen each day. According to NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, 55 earthquakes a day. 55 earthquakes every day around the world. And so when an earthquake inevitably happens over in who knows where, well, there you go, guys. I predicted, I told you there's going to be a big earthquake. And Khan was on the Glenn Beck program just a couple weeks ago talking about these spooky, mysterious signs that this Shemitah would bring judgment. A fake rabbi and fake Christian are talking, because he's a Mormon, by the way, Glenn Beck, talking about end times prophecy. I mean, this is the same guy who brought on Taylor Marshall, right? So, yeah, he's out there. Khan has been a repeated guest on Jim Bakker's program, which we'll take a look at here in a moment, promoting the Shemitah nonsense. They note the failure. Yeah, it didn't happen, not even close. Well, a few things happened, to be fair. Jonathan Cahn sold millions of dollars in books. Jim Bakker sold some survival supplies, and Charisma magazine got some real mileage out of the farce over the last year. The Shemitah is over. Jonathan Cahn is a false prophet, and evangelicals have been made fools of once again. Oh, also, this is obligatory. We told you so. By the way, we will take a look here in a moment at their article where they say that Jonathan Cahn sends them a cease and desist letter, contends he never gave false prophecies. We'll take a look at that here in a little bit. But yeah, okay, let's go on to another thing. This is from WND, talking about some of the claims that Cahn was making. I do believe a great shaking is coming to America, a shaking that will involve the collapse of the financial realm, the collapse of the economy, and a collapse even greater than these. This can take place within the parameters of the Shemitah or beyond, but I believe they're coming. Always leave a little bit of wiggle room so that you can't just be outright labeled a false prophet. Yeah, it's coming. It could be this year, maybe next year, maybe 20 years after that, but it's coming. It's coming. The phenomenon of the Shemitah has been intensifying in the last two cycles. The Shemitah's dynamics have grown stronger in intensity and precision, he continued. At the end of the Shemitah 2001, in the month of September, the stock market collapsed in the greatest point implosion in history. The day of its collapse was Elul 29. See what the dates. The very last day of the Shemitah, the same day appointed by God as the day of the financial nullification, in exact accordance with the mystery. In September of 2008, the stock market again collapsed in the greatest point crash in world history, and did so on the very same day, Elul 29, the day appointed in the Bible. I mean, this is dizzying. Can you imagine living on this guy's content? It has to certainly be brainwashing. Now, look, let me just say, all of this stuff, all these dates, this is the same guy who can't do just basic research. I've shown you multiple times now where Jonathan Cahn takes an article from a satire website, a satire article with a bunch of made up quotes, because it's a satire piece, and made up quotes about Pope Francis, and he takes them as authentic quotes about Pope Francis, doesn't tell you that it comes from a satire website that was completely made up, and uses them as authentic quotes, and then goes on to rebut them before his audience. And then tries to tie in his prophetic message in his book to what he just refuted from Pope Francis, even though Pope Francis never said any of this. It came from a satire website. I documented that thoroughly. This guy has zero research skills. It's absolutely a joke. But, you throw out terms like the month of Elul and stuff like that. I mean, the average person is not going to know their left from their right. So it's going to sound like this guy knows what he's talking about, to your average evangelical. But of course, yeah, no, he doesn't. Now, watch how he tries to, save face with his miserable failure with the Shemitah nonsense. Watch this. People are saying they can't hear. All right, let me try that again.
Last week, the good friend Jonathan Cahn told us about the mystery of the Shemitah. You probably didn't understand what that was all about. That's every 7 years, the Bible calls for a Sabbath rest. And that year is called the Shemitah. On the last day of the Shemitah of years past, we've seen massive drops in the stock market. The most recent Shemitah ended this past Sunday. So Jonathan is here, and I want to say, Jonathan, did it happen or not?
Okay. Well,
Wait, what if you even have to ask the question, there's already a problem, right? If you have a prophetic message, it should be so evident whether or not it happened and came true, right? You shouldn't even have to ask. So here he's trying to help him save face.
great to be back, and I just want to say something, because we usually say this privately, but it's the 7 days of Blaze here, and I came to the Lord during the 7 days of Blaze, watching the 700 Club throughout that time. As a Jewish person, that was helping me to come to the Lord during the 7 days of Blaze.
Well, we were honoring Israel.
Yes.
Yeah, that's praise God.
Yeah, so I want to, people don't know that, but that's just the many things that come from the ministry.
I'm thrilled to hear that.
Yeah, well, here's the last thing I said when we were here last week is, and I've said this from the beginning, is nothing has to happen, and you can't put God in a box because he'll get out of it. So the thing is, so the stock market wasn't open on Sunday, so you can't really have a crash. But the interesting thing is that what's happened with the Shemitah is there's several templates in the book of how the different ones have come in the last 40 and 50 years. This one has, two of them have had a crash on Elul 29, but the others have a different pattern, and that's what this has done. This has followed the pattern of this. When the Shemitahs happened, the last cycles is what's happened is that before the Shemitah come, that last day, there's the stock market, which has been ascending.
Yes.
You know what this reminds me of? It's like an Ancient Aliens episode where somebody, presents themselves as an expert on a particular subject, and they're making all these claims, and they're building, on another claim with a whole bunch of speculation. Then they're building on that claim with a whole bunch of other speculation. Then they're building on that claim with more speculation. And it's going to sound like it's well researched to a person who doesn't know their left from their right. But for anybody who actually knows what they're talking about, it sounds absolutely insane. This is what it reminds me of.
The Shemitah changes that direction and it begins descending. Right. That has happened in this one as well. This started in the summer. This is following the pattern of 1987 Shemitah, which is it's almost following the same trajectory. What's happened, I was just told today that this Shemitah of this year has wiped away $2 trillion of the U.S. stock market and $5 trillion of the world stock market. Yeah. So it has followed the same thing of the major pattern. So that's still happened. The other thing is, and the other thing is that this period now is called the Shemitah's wake, when sometimes you have the greatest crashes coming here. You have it in the last time. So we'll see. But it has already folled that trajectory of the general pattern. The other thing is that when we were on the air last time, you were saying, I was saying, the stock market's not open that day. I said, but the word Shemitah means shaking. I said, you can also have a shaking of the earth. And you said, well, what do you mean earthquake on that day? I said, well, that can be. Yeah. Well,
it could be, maybe, I don't know. Even though there, again, are 55 earthquakes every single day. It could be an earthquake. Yeah. It means shaking. So, earthquake. Yeah. So if there's an earthquake the next day, bam, told ya. Even though there's going to be 55 earthquakes every day.
Well, what people don't realize, on Sunday, September 13th, the day of the Shemitah, which also means shaking, an earthquake struck. There was a shaking here, and it struck the California Gulf, 6.6 on the Richter scale. So we said this last week, and it's not saying that. I'm not saying that's the great.
Yeah, but that further corroborates what you're saying, because you were able to anticipate that there's going to be an earthquake. Y'all, I have a prophetic mystery for you here. I have a prophetic word for you. Jonathan Cahn is a fraud. And here is the prophetic evidence to demonstrate that he's a fraud. Tomorrow, somewhere there will be a thunderstorm. So if tomorrow, somewhere in the world, there's a thunderstorm, bam, that corroborates my claim that he's a fraud. Don't forget to check out my new book, blah, 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 whenever you find out that my prediction was true. You can see where I talk about this in my book, The Mystery of Thunderstorms in the Prophetic Realm, published by Amazon. Right? You see how this works.
Great shaking, but could that be a sign of something coming? But that actually happened on the day of shaking. The other thing about happening with this Shemitah is that we touched on the last time is that America has been the strongest economic power since 1871. With this last Shemitah, this has now changed. The American age of the strongest power has changed. The word Shemitah means fall, so it is no longer. So you have several things, but it has, in effect, followed that same trajectory, and we'll see in the days to come. There's still, there's the seventh Shemitah coming up. There's a prophetic thing coming up as well.
Can you imagine living in this world every day? All right, here is Jonathan Cahn on the Jim Baker Show. In a moment, we're going to see a little bit more information about Jim Baker, but let's take a look at what he's saying here.
This is the center of everything, and just since I was last here, something major happened. United Nations, America, this is Obama planned this, without any question. America abandoned Israel over Jerusalem. So what is the issue of Jerusalem? Jerusalem is the center of biblical prophecy. Everything is centering on it. That's the end game. That's the final goal. It's Jerusalem. So we need to know where we are in this. And let me just give you in maybe 2 minutes or so, 4,000 years of Jerusalem's history. Just so you have an idea.
All right, so clearly you see him here with Jim Baker. Now, you know what Khan also reminds me of? Some of those evangelicals who try to read the book of Revelation in one hand and a newspaper in the other, and they're trying to piece it all together. That's Jonathan Cahn on steroids. He is the perfect embodiment of that, which makes it incredibly entertaining and comical, but at the same time also destructive to souls, the many souls that it misleads whenever they find out that they've embraced fraudulent material. All right, but here we see him being plugged by Jim Baker. Now, who is Jim Baker? Well, glad you asked. Y'all remember Jim and Tammy? Yeah. A $279,000 payoff for the silence of Jessica Hahn, who alleged that Baker and former PTL Club co-host Jonathan Wesley Fletcher drugged and raped her, was paid with PTL funds through Baker's associate, Roe Messner. Baker, who made PTL's financial decisions, allegedly kept 2 sets of books to conceal accounting irregularities. Reportings for the Charlotte Observer, led by Charles Shepard, investigated PTL finances and published a series of articles. On March 19, 1987, after the disclosure of a payoff to Hahn, Baker resigned from PTL. Although he acknowledged that he had a sexual encounter with Hahn at a hotel room in Clearwater, Florida, he denied raping her. This is the guy in question. Baker was also the subject of homosexual and bisexual allegations made by Fletcher, which Baker denied under oath. Rival televangelist John Akerberg appeared on Larry King Live and made several allegations of moral impropriety against Baker, which both Bakers denied. Baker was succeeded as PTL head by the Reverend Jerry Falwell. Y'all remember Falwell? Baker chose Falwell as his successor because he feared that fellow televangelist Jimmy Swaggart, who had initiated an Assemblies of God investigation into Baker's sexual misconduct, was attempting to take over his ministry. Y'all remember Jimmy Swaggart? Also, deeply problematic individual with his own scandals. Baker believed that Falwell would temporarily lead the ministry until the scandal died down. But on April 28, 1987, Falwell barred Baker from returning to PTL upon hearing of allegations of illicit behavior, which went beyond the Hahn allegations. Later that summer, as donations declined sharply in the wake of Baker's resignation and the end of the PTL Club, Falwell raised $20 million to keep Heritage USA solvent and took a promised waterslide ride at the park. Falwell and the remaining members of the PTL board resigned in October 1987, stating that a ruling from a bankruptcy court judge made rebuilding the ministry impossible. In response to the scandal, Falwell called Baker a liar, an embezzler, a sexual deviant, and the greatest scab and cancer on the face of Christianity in 2,000 years of church history. Wow. On CNN, Swaggart stated that Baker was a cancer in the body of Christ. In February 1988, Swaggart became involved in a sexual scandal of his own after being caught visiting prostitutes in New Orleans. The Baker and Swaggart scandals had a profound effect on the world of televangelism, creating or causing greater media scrutiny of TV ministers and their finances. But people have a short memory, so Baker is back at it again. It's kind of like that other fraudulent guy, Peter Popoff, who was exposed all over ministry, all over TV for his fake prophetic ministry. He, went away for a few years, then he came right back and returned to the same shenanigans, but people had forgotten that he was already caught for all those things, so people then started to give him money again. Falwell said that the scandals had strengthened broadcast evangelism and made Christianity stronger, more mature, and more committed. Yeah, sure. The PTL Club's fundraising activities between 1984 and 87 were reported by the Charlotte Observer, eventually leading to criminal charges against Baker. Baker and his PTL associates sold 1,000 lifetime memberships, entitling buyers to an annual 3-night stay at a luxury hotel at Heritage USA during that period. According to the prosecution at Baker's fraud trial, tens of thousands of memberships were sold, but only one 500-room hotel was ever finished. Baker sold exclusive partnerships, which exceeded capacity, raising more than twice the money needed to build the hotel. Much of the money paid Heritage USA's operating expenses, and Baker kept $3.4 million. After a 16-month federal grand jury probe, Baker was indicted in 1988 on 8 counts of mail fraud, 15 counts of wire fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy. In 1989, after a 5-week trial, which began on October 28th in Charlotte, North Carolina, a jury found him guilty on all 24 counts. Judge Robert Daniel Potter sentenced Baker to 45 years in federal prison and imposed a $500,000 fine. At the Federal Medical Center Rochester in Rochester, Minnesota, he shared a cell with activist Lyndon LaRoche and skydiver Roger Nelson. The United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit upheld Baker's conviction on the fraud and conspiracy charges, voided Baker's 45-year sentence and $500,000 fine, and ordered a new sentencing hearing in February of 1991. The court ruled that Potter's sentencing statement about Baker, that those of us who do not have a religion are sick of being saps for money, grubbing preachers and priests, was evidence that the judge had injected his religious beliefs into Baker's sentence. A sentence reduction hearing was held on November 16, 1992, and Baker's sentence was reduced to 8 years. In August 1993, he was transferred to a minimum security federal prison in Georgia. Baker was paroled in July of 1994 after serving almost 5 years of his sentence. And so on. Do you see the wild shenanigans here surrounding Baker? Okay, that's the guy that Jonathan Cahn wants to, be in league with, team up with, to promote his fake prophetic message. By the way, the same Jim Baker who says this about his silver gel that he sells on his program. Take a look at this commercial. I kid you not, this is real.
We love this product so much. If you've never tried it, now is the time. This is a great deal. It's $58. You get 2 of the Silver Sol 4-ounce bottles of gel, and you get 2 of the Silver Sol lozenges, 2 boxes of those, and they're all natural. This is a product that can be used by a newborn baby to up 100 and plus. It's wonderful. We love it so much. Call right now, 888-988-1588, or you can go to jimbakershow.com.
The amazing thing is it's safe for babies, but it's the most amazing product. It's proven to kill every venereal disease there is. And
oh, wow. Okay. It's proven to kill every venereal disease there is, he says. Okay. Although the Mayo Clinic is warning against the product Baker is selling and claims that it's potentially dangerous. Colloidal silver isn't considered safe or effective for any of the health claims manufacturers make. Silver has no known purpose in the body, nor is it an essential mineral, as some sellers of silver products claim. Manufacturers of colloidal silver products often claim that they are cure-alls, boosting your immune system, fighting bacteria and viruses, and treating cancer, HIVs, AIDS, shingles, herpes, eye ailments, and prostatitis. However, no sound scientific studies to evaluate these health claims have been published in reputable medical journals. In fact, the Food and Drug Administration has taken action against some manufacturers of colloidal silver products for making unproven health claims. So snake oil, miracle salve. Okay, so this is Jim Baker. This is the one that Jonathan Cahn wants to team up with. Well, you know what? They are a very great pair. They belong to each other, certainly. Jonathan Cahn sends, this is from Pulpit and Pen. Jonathan Cahn sends lamest cease and desist letter ever, they claim, contends he never gave false prophecy. Now, in fairness to Cahn, I don't see a copy of this, but I haven't seen it disputed, so I have to assume it's authentic. Pulpit and Pen has been in this business for a while. We're in the business of speaking freely. And we speak freely as an exercise of our religion, while also speaking or writing under the protection of the First Amendment. Federal courts have ruled that bloggers have the same rights as all journalists, and the rights afforded to all the press are afforded to those not writing for institutional press outlets. Occasionally, we get ominous-sounding cease and desist letters from megachurch pastors. We see this a lot from them, right? Guys like Benny Hinn. Megachurch pastors. And by the way, I'm referencing that whole copyright dispute situation between him and Mike Winger. Also, I'm referencing Joel Osteen and Mike Winger versus Mike Winger. Or religious charlatans who don't understand that we can speak our religious opinion freely. We ignore those letters and have never suffered any legal consequences for responding with a formal letter that says, laugh out loud. I like that. In fact, other than the annoyance of bogus copyright claims to YouTube that don't understand or respect fair use, Andy Stanley's legal team is pretty proficient at this tactic. We've never been silenced or so much as greatly inconvenienced by the chest-thumping threats of heretics or scoundrels. Jonathan Cahn's attempt to silence our criticism is no exception to this rule. Pulpit and Pen received an email from nmglad@aol.com. I know what you're thinking. Surely with an email address like this, it's got to be a high-powered law firm that was found circa 1997. But it turns out from the miracle that it is Google, from the miracle that is Google, that nmglad@aol.com is an email address belonging to Jonathan Cahn, and then they show a little screenshot of that, substantiating that claim. Nonnet is the high school in New York from which Cahn graduated in 1997, and Cahn has been using this email address since, as you can see above, at least 2005. The email sent from Cahn's personal address was sent on an open Word document. An attorney, of course, wouldn't be caught dead sending a cease and desist letter in an open Word document. The notion is laughable from its onset. Now, they show a little screenshot of this, but it only shows part of it. BI Jerusalem Center Legal Department gives the address. pulpitandpen.org gives the date, and that's all they show. I know what you're thinking. That's an impressive letterhead indeed. Actually, the BI Jerusalem Center is the Beth Israel Jerusalem Center, the Church of Jonathan Cahn. Wow, that's a church? Okay. It is not a law firm. It does not have a legal department. This is not sent by an attorney. This was sent by Jonathan Cahn. It was lame. The letter from the legal department at Beth Israel Jerusalem Center claims that we have erred in accusing Cahn of false prophecies. It reads, Jonathan Cahn has never made any prophecy or predicted any event concerning the future. Oddly enough, though, you can see many of his messages. Jonathan Cahn official, prophetic message. Jonathan Cahn, a prophetic warning from America. They're on almost, a whole slew of his videos have this. And so I don't know how they can claim he hasn't made any prophecies. But okay, sure. All right. Further, there is no prophecy of any specific event or timing contained in either the Harbinger or the mystery of the Shemitah. No such mystery of the Shemitah prophecy exists or has ever existed. They say, oh, really? Well, let's observe the facts and see if Cahn has never made any prophecies in his books. Is that really an accurate statement? On page 4 of the Harbinger, Cahn writes, the Harbinger contains 14 major revelations or mysteries. The Alliance for Biblical Integrity points out Kahn's status as a prophet using his own words and words used about him by those promoting him. Although Cahn says he does not claim to be a prophet, he does affirm that his message is prophetic. A distinction without a difference, if there ever was one. But what else besides prophet would be an appropriate title for someone who believes that he has discovered the hidden meaning of a biblical mystery and then proclaims this prophetic message as factual? He is doing more than simply relaying a message given by someone else. He's the originator. In the brief biography introducing the author, on the back cover of the Harbinger, it has the following. His teachings are seen on television and radio throughout the nation and are known for their prophetic significance and their revealing of deep mysteries of God's word. Others have also identified Kahn's message as prophetic and him as a prophet. For example, in September, It's Supernatural aired shows that were produced around interviews with Jonathan Cahn. Of these, host Sid Roth, that guy is a piece of work, said, this is the most important prophetic show you will ever see. He says that about every one of his shows. On Amazon.com, the book description includes the following. Hidden in an ancient biblical prophecy from Isaiah, the mysteries revealed in the Harbinger are so precise that they foretold recent American events down to the exact date. The revelations are so specific that even the most hardened skeptics will find it hard to dismiss or put down. It sounds like the plot of a Hollywood thriller, with one exception, it's real. Why then, when Kahn's own book description at Amazon claims that the mysteries revealed in the Harbinger are so precise that they foretold recent American events down to the exact days, does the cease and desist letter goes on to say, far beyond that, Jonathan Cahn, and completely to the contrary, whenever dealing with the subject, as with the Shemitah, has always warned those discussing it or listening that nothing had to take place at any given time. Regarding the mystery of the Shemitah, the entire premise of the book is that Israel's history was on a 7-year cycle, and that the Shemitah year would likely bring economic or other kinds of collapse. It's the thesis of the book, for crying out loud. But how about just some video evidence? Here's Jonathan Cahn on Jim Bakker's survival food infomercial. All right, here's again Baker. We just read about him. Let's watch just a minute or so of it. I fully anticipate they'll try to give me a hard time by showing this stuff and try to get the video taken down. All right, let's watch it.
There's more to
Yes,
the
there is.
Shemitah.
Yes, there is.
Could we deal
Yeah.
with that for a few minutes?
Yeah, I'll show you some things with that. Yeah, first of all, one of the things in the Harbinger and in the mystery of the Shemitah, you'll actually see the words appear. It says the effects of the Shemitah, the repercussions, not only affect the financial realm, but the realm of production, consumption, and trade. Now, specifically that, because in the Bible, when you had the Shemitah, there was the land stopped producing. They didn't have industry like we do, but they had production. The land stopped producing. They stopped selling the fruit, so trade stops or decreases. And well, in the modern times, that translates to trade and all those things. So here's the question: did the Shemitah affect not just the stock market, all that, but actually all these other realms? And I want to show you something. If you have global trade, you have the headline on global trade. This is what happened. This is what the Shemitah did to global trade. plummets 70%. 70%
Wow.
in 3 weeks.
Wow.
Let's just
He proved that. I mean, it's all just so connected. Got to get the book now.
do the next one, a global trade. Is collapsing. Was literally the Shemitah really in that time? It collapsed. Next one, world trade. It's his biggest contract since when? 2008, the other Shemitah. Again, and this is not Christian. This is secular. Okay.
There it is. There it is.
The next one, I believe they have one more. In free fall, literally, I mean, this is one of the most uncovered stories of the last year.
And there's just no way to explain this other than his Shemitah claims.
And that is that global trade has totally collapsed. I mean, to this day. Now, here we have a graph of in a moment, you're going to see the pink area represents the Shemitah. This is world imports.
Yeah.
Look at what happened at world imports. You see it's high.
There it is. There it is. All right, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Now, like all false prophets, Khan leaves a back door open. He will spend 99.9% of his time explaining what will what will happen in the near future, and then include a small print disclaimer, literal or otherwise, that leaves a wink wink. I'm not saying it definitely will happen. God might change his mind, but in fact, he says in that video that we saw earlier on the 700 Club. Well, you would try to put God in a box with exact dates. God's going to come out of the box. He can't be put in a box. You can't pin him down like that. That's the way he tries to cover his tracks after the fact. The fact is, not only has Jonathan Cahn sold several books premised upon false prophecy, but he has continued to write more books finding these bizarre and hermeneutically deficient connections between past and future events. Not only that, he has slandered and bears false witness against Pope Francis, as I've demonstrated, by pointing to alleged words of Pope Francis that don't come from Pope Francis. They actually come from satire articles about Pope Francis, and he quotes them as if they're real quotes about Pope Francis, and then shows how that proves his prophetic message. Absolutely shameful. Snake oil material. They say, now notice the bullying here. We will note that Newsweek did a similar thing regarding Jonathan, relying on left-wing sources. They then realized the legal danger they were in and immediately deleted the text from the web and offered a prompt apology and correction in written form on the web. They say, we don't know what Khan is talking about. We are not Newsweek. If Khan wants to debate what constitutes false prophecy in court with a polemicist, he's more than welcome to try that. Pulpit and Pen has the readership base necessary to raise the funds, provide seller representation, and wipe the floor with Khan and the entire doomsday prophetic industry in court. The fact that Khan gives occasional disclaimers about his prophecies possibly being inaccurate doesn't undo the fact that his entire ministry is built on fear-mongering with demonstrably false prophecies. Yeah, that's exactly right. Fear-mongering. Yes. The letter says, let us know that you are going to do the right and godly thing, as well as the action that would prevent legal jeopardy and consequent legal repercussions. Sincerely, B.I. I guess he's ignoring the part of scripture where he's not supposed to be suing other Christians, but okay. Again, B.I. is not the name of an attorney. It stands for Beth Israel, and the Beth Israel Center doesn't have a legal department. This is utter nonsense. Khan's cease and desist letter is as phony as his prophecy. I assume that this is authentic because I suspect that if this weren't the case, Pulpit and Pen, when they wrote this in 2017, would have had to have taken this down because of legal action. And so, all right, moving on. Here is him trying to give a prophetic word to President Biden.
Mr. President, when you lit up the White House as a rainbow to seal and celebrate what you did that day, the Respect for Marriage Act, God answered you. God spoke. God put up his own seal, his own sign. You see, when you sealed and celebrated what you did that day by lighting up the White House as a rainbow on the night of December 13th, you actually did it on the biblical date of the 20th day of Kislev, the biblical day that exposes sinful unions.
This guy's insane. He really thinks that he can speak on behalf of God like this.
Of sin. You sealed the Respect for Marriage Act. That day, on the one day in the Bible, on the calendar, Kislev 20, that is specifically dedicated to the marriages that God cannot respect and that were answered by national repentance. How did that happen? You didn't plan it that way. Nobody on your staff did. But you see, God, whose ways you disregard and overturn, is actually alive and well.
And tell me he is not trying to orient himself as a prophet when he does this. Well, there's a whole lot more to it. Here's another one. A prophetic warning for America. Of course, on TWN, one of the most corrupt networks out there. Let's listen to just a minute of it.
Yes. And America has been blessed more than any nation in the history of the world. Not an official covenant nation like Israel, but this was a nation founded on godly principles.
It was founded after the pattern of Israel by the Puritans. And you know, one of the things the people don't always realize is that John Winthrop, who spoke about the city on the hill, we shall be a city on the hill.
And you talk about that in the book.
Yeah, he said we will be blessed more than any, and we have been, but they forget.
And notice they're advertising the book, of course.
That he warned, he says, but if you turn away, the judgments that came on Israel are going to come upon you.
I wonder if we fact checked his dates. Vincent says, if you fact check him, you're going to find the same kind of stuff that I uncovered. When I fact check him, allegedly quoting Pope Francis, I found out that he was quoting a satire article. A satire article. That shows you the extent of his research abilities.
Basically, I'm paraphrasing, and that's exactly what this is. All the judgments and the patterns of Israel are coming upon us.
And Moses warned the people of Israel, and basically his last talk or his last speech to the Jewish people, he gave that same warning about what would happen to Israel if they turned away from the God of Israel.
And Winthrop basically quoted from Moses' speech to warn America, and that was the appointed word that was leading the days up to 9/11 was Moses' warning.
Yeah.
So you see how he's trying to connect against scripture with America and current events in America. Can you imagine, again, living on this diet? But again, I want to circle back to the point here about if you can be so poor in your research skills that nobody, including yourself, and nobody in your team said, hey, wait, you're actually quoting fake quotes from a satire website that doesn't go back to Pope Francis. This isn't really what Pope Francis said. This is a satire website. If he couldn't find that in his own research, which again, a basic Google search would have told him that this is where the quote came from. It's from a satire article. If he doesn't have the academic discipline to do that, or the research skills to do that, and his team doesn't have the ability to do that, you can't consider anything that he says legit. You have to question everything. If he says that it's, sunny outside, you have to question that. It might be sunny. It might not be. It might be nighttime. You just have to fact check everything at that point if he can't get basic stuff like that right. So absolutely ridiculous stuff. It's very wild world that he seems to live in. And that his audience also seem to live in. Anyways, hope y'all enjoyed this. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Of course, check me out at patreon.com/reason and theology if you want to support the channel. We'll see you later. Hey friends, do you want others to discover why the Catholic Church is the church that Jesus established? And do you want to help people make sense of all the confusion in the Catholic Church today? Help contribute to this mission by supporting Reason and Theology at patreon.com/reason and theology. By doing so, you'll also get access to exclusive content for patrons only. Also, if you want to deepen your faith, there are free ebooks and even courses that you can sign up for by visiting reason.podia.com.